Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, Part 6, in which all our protagonists find the thin veneer of tranquility in their lives, tested by family and friends, with farcical and tragic consequences. Chapter 4. Varenka, with her white kerchief over her dark hair, surrounded by children, good-naturedly and cheerfully occupied with them, and apparently excited by the possibility of a declaration from a man she liked, was very attractive. Sergei Ivanovitch walked beside her and kept admiring her. Looking at her, he recalled all the nice conversation he had heard from her, all the good he had heard about her, and realized more and more that the feeling he had for her was something special, which he'd experienced long, long ago, and only once in his early youth. The feeling of joy at her nearness, ever increasing, reached the point where, as he put into her basket a huge mushroom he had found, with a slender foot and upturned edge, he glanced into her eyes, and noticing the blush of joyful and frightened excitement that spread over her face, became confused himself, and silently smiled to her the sort of smile that says, "All too much." "If it's so," he said to himself, "I must think it over and decide, and not give myself like a boy to some momentary infatuation. I'll go now and acquire mushrooms on my own, otherwise my acquisitions won't be noticed," he said, and went alone away from the edge of the wood, where they were walking over silky low grass among sparse old birches, towards the depths of the wood, whose grey aspen trunks and dark hazel bushes showed among the white birch trunks. Going some 40 paces away, and stepping behind a spindle tree in full bloom, with its pinkish-red catkins, Sergei Ivanovitch stopped, knowing he could not be seen. Around him it was perfectly still. Only the flies made a ceaseless noise like a swarm of bees in the tops of the birches he was standing under, and now and then the children's voices reached him. Suddenly, from the edge of the wood not too far away, he heard Varenka's contralto calling Grisha, and a joyful smile lit up Sergei Ivanovitch's face. Conscious of this smile, Sergei Ivanovitch shook his head disapprovingly at the state he was in, and, taking out a cigar, began to light it. For a long time he was unable to strike a match against the birch trunk. The tender film of the white bark stuck to the phosphorus, and the flame went out. Finally, a match flared up, and the strong-scented smoke of the cigar, clearly outlined in a broad undulating sheet, spread forward and up over the bush under the hanging birch branches. Following the strip of smoke with his eyes, Sergei Ivanovitch walked on at a slow pace, reflecting on his state. And why not, he thought? If it were a momentary flash or passion, if I experienced only this attraction, this mutual attraction, I may call it mutual, but felt that it went against my whole mode of life, if I felt that in yielding this attraction I would betray my calling and my duty, but it's not so. The only thing I can say against it is that when I lost Marie, I told myself I would remain faithful to her memory. That is all I can say against my feeling. That's important, Sergei Ivanovitch said to himself, feeling at the same time that for him personally this consideration could have no importance at all, but would only spoil his poetic role in the eyes of others. But apart from that, search as I may, I won't find anything to say against my feelings. If I were to choose with my mind alone, I couldn't find anything better. He recalled any number of women and girls he knew, but could not recall one who would combine to such a degree at all precisely all the qualities that he, reasoning coldly, would wish to see in his wife. She had all the loveliness and freshness of youth, yet she was not a child, and if she loved him consciously, as a woman should love. That was one thing. Another, she was not only far from worldliness, but obviously had a loathing for the world. Yet at the same time she knew that the world, and had all the manners of a woman of good society, without which a life's companion was unthinkable for Sergei Ivanovitch. Third, she was religious, and not unaccountably religious and good, like a child, like Kitty, for instance, but her life was based on religious convictions. Even in the smallest details, Sergei Ivanovitch found in her everything he could wish for in a wife. She was poor and alone, so she would not bring a heap of relations and their influence into the house, as he saw with Kitty, but would be obliged to her husband in all things, which he had also always wished for his future family life. And this girl, who combined all these qualities in herself, loved him. He was modest, but he could not fail to see it, and he loved her. One negative consideration was his age, but his breed was long-lived. He did not have a single gray hair. No one would have taken him for 40, and he remembered Varenka saying that it was only in Russia that people considered themselves old at the age of 50, that in France a 50-year-old man considered himself dans la forge de l'âge, and a 40-year-old un jeune homme. But what did the counting of years mean if he felt himself youth in his soul, as he had been 20 years ago? Was it not youth, the feeling he experienced now, when, coming out to the edge of the wood again from the other side, he saw in the bright light of the sun's slanting rays Varenka's graceful figure in a yellow dress, and with her basket, walking with a slight step past the trunk of an old birch, and when the suppression from the sight of Varenka merged with the sight which struck him with its beauty, of a yellowing field of oats bathed in the slanting light, of an old wood far beyond the field sported with yellow, melting into the blue distance, his heart was wrung with joy. A feeling of tenderness came over him. He felt resolved. Varenka, who had just crouched down to pick a mushroom, stood up with a supple movement and looked over her shoulder. Throwing his cigar away, Sergei Ivanovitch walked toward her with resolute strides. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.